I'm on a quest to have a second healthy baby, and that means I'm not putting any toxins, any fragrances in my body, and that's where Caraway Home cookware and their Tupperware come into play. Right now, when you use my code TSFS at carawayhome.com, you get 10% off. I'm sure you're like, Sarah, what are you talking about? Well, Caraway products are non-toxic. That means they have no PFAs, PTFEs, those forever chemicals that are extremely hard to pronounce. And I just ordered their storage containers in navy. Oh, and hello, they don't have any toxic chemicals either. Don't believe me? Go and read their 5-star reviews. Over 65,000 people have rated them 5 stars. Visit carawayhome.com/TSFS to take advantage of this limited time offer for 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusive to Sarah Fraser Show listeners, so support my show and visit carawayhome.com/TSFS or use code TSFS at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. All right, you all wanted it, so we teamed up again. Riley Couture, famously from The Kane Show and Your Morning Show, returns, and it's an emotional one today. So certainly get your tissues ready. And if you've ever been in a domestic violence relationship, it is one of the most difficult things to wrap your head around, to get out of. I've had girlfriends who I adore, who I never thought would be with a guy who grabbed them by the neck, hit them, kicked them out of the house violently. And it happens. And what do? Well, Riley, when we did our multi-part episode, hopefully you got a chance to listen to that for her to tell her radio story. She had brought up that she was with a guy for many years. She was actually engaged to him that physically abused her for on and off throughout that relationship. And so Natasha and I wanted to dive into that to potentially help somebody listening just avoid, if you can, being with somebody who hits you. And if you are in that situation, how do you leave? Well, Riley gets really raw, really Riley right now. Here she is. We need an official team now for the three of us. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Team radio.
I know. We need to figure that out. I don't know what it is either, because that's like such a big, like, special thing that it's got to be thought out.
What should we call it? Anyway, look, we're back together. You guys loved our episode so much, our 2-parter with Riley Couture, formerly of The Kane Show, Your Morning Show. We all know our girl, Natasha Elisa, longtime blogger, also tied to radio forever and ever, and myself. And so we wanted to come back because Riley, I know Natasha and I both, when you brought this up on the 2-parter, wanted to get into it, but it was kind of almost like a whole nother life story of yours that we were both drawn to. And we thought, okay, this story has to be told and it will help so many other women too. And that was that you brought up that you had been in just a violent relationship, right? Like you were a survivor of domestic violence. And so I think, I don't know how you felt in that, but when you said that, I was like, okay, that's a whole nother story. I want to hear about her life.
I had no idea. I know. And you mentioned it like kind of just so casually, like slipped it in. And it's like, wait a minute. There's a lot to unpack there.
What's interesting about that is that I've kind of briefly touched on this too, that I was a child of trauma and everything like that. So trauma in my life and relationships and the way that they were shown to me growing up was normal, if you will. And it's just, when I bring it up so nonchalant, I guess maybe it's because it was like 15 years ago now, but it was probably some of the most traumatic times of my life. Interesting enough as well, in the other podcast, a lot of people were commenting on Instagram saying that like there was a lot of pauses with me. And I was thinking about that and I'm like, well, I've blocked out a lot of the things like in daily life. But then when you talk about it, it comes back. Like I was actually leaving the gym today and I was thinking about a lot of the things that happened within that relationship. And I was just like, wow. I often tell my husband that I'm like, if you knew that girl, I don't know if you would have got down on one knee, because she is, at least I hope, 90% the antithesis of who I am now. Like the we got this girl was not that. But it was definitely a time in my life that I would never relive. But I'm glad that I learned so much about myself from that relationship, because had I not, I don't think I would have been prepared to have the loving marriage that I have now. Like one point I want to make before I say this with everybody is one of the biggest things is people ask me, how did you get past that emotionally and physically abusive relationship to get you where you are with Marshall, my husband now? And my answer to that is always, well, I had to look inwardly a lot. And a lot of people don't think about it that way. When you're the victim of abuse, I had to go inside and go, what did I think of myself that I was accepting that? What did I not love about me that I allowed those things to happen and got engaged not once, but twice to the same person? Like it wasn't something that I even left. I mean, we can get into that too, but I definitely say, like, anybody that's going through this, I'm not saying blame yourself. I'm saying when you go to the other side and you get to your happiness, just make sure you clear up the stuff in your heart that was broken there, that you revisit how to love you, because I feel like if you love yourself more than anybody else in the world ever could, then you're going to meet that person that maybe tops that. I did. I mean, I don't mean to be like hee hee, but I'm so grateful for that time because now I was able to appreciate my husband today. So
Sarah always tells me, like, healed people attract healed people.
Right? Isn't it crazy? Like, it's so elementary if you really think about it. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody's journey, but the choose happy thing that it still annoys me to this day is a lot easier than you would think when you break it down in small steps. And I think that was my biggest step to getting past that. I think I'm jumping ahead of myself. Like that should have been at the end, but
no. But and I always an abuser can always find somebody that isn't healed. You know, they prey on someone that's not healed because, to your point, once you did all the work and the inner work, you weren't going to attract that guy was never going to come back to you because he didn't have the control over you. So abusers always find that person that isn't healed. Go back and Nat, jump in, but tell us like how you met him. I think the thing that's so important about this conversation I wanted to do today, and you ladies jump in, is domestic violence is something that can really sneak up on you. They start great. They, and it can be a year in, it can be 2 years in, and unfortunately we all know women, and you, Riley, Nat, you have your own story. I mean, it's so common. It's so common. And they often don't start out that way. So yeah. I think this conversation is important because if one person hears the red flags and sees it in someone they're starting to date, can save their life.
Yes, 100%. So when I met him, I was doing radio in Memphis, and I was...
How old were you?
28 when we met. So I think this is important to note. I was in this phase, which makes me laugh now because I got married and had my latest son at 40. I was thinking at 28, my clock is ticking. Oh my God, I'm never going to find anybody. I'd just broken up with this boo-boo loser that was also like emotionally abusive in his own way. And I had this like epiphany moment. We had this big thing called the Peabody Hotel rooftop party. It was the biggest party in Memphis. So we were like the kings and queens of that, the morning show hosts or whatever, especially in Memphis because it's a smaller town or whatever. And I guess I was like a mini celebrity. And I had this little moment where I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to invite like 5-6 people to this party tonight. And I'm going to see who I like and see who shows up. And he was the only one that showed up. And I remember him telling me that night he saw me on stage and that he fell in love with me then because I was doing something he could never do. That I was so luminous on stage and he was like kind of introverted in a sense, and that I was just so like unicorn to him. But we started dating very fast. 2 weeks in, he picked me up for like a golf outing. He had flowers. He told me, I told my friends you're my girlfriend. Think about that for a second. Yeah. Didn't ask me, but I was just so like, oh my God, yes, because he was 4 years older than me. He was making good money then. He looked great on paper, right? He was divorced. He had a son. And this is another red flag that I did not pay attention to. He almost never saw said son, at least when we were first together. It was like he had such animosity towards his son's mother, another red flag. And he was angry that he had to pay child support, all of the things, right? ignored all of that because I was so just, oh my God, this could be my person. He seems so great on paper. He was, a semi-attractive man and was fit and whatever. And he was a professional, everything that seemed like this safe, protective place that I hadn't had in my father figures before or in boyfriends before. And we just seemed to be so fiery and clicked, but it went south really freaking fast. We were together for like 2 months. Now, mind you, in this stage of my life, I was looking for my husband in every Tom, Dick, and Harry there was. So very early in, we started talking marriage. And we went out one night and got wasted drunk. This was our favorite pastime together, was just drinking. And he tended to be a very angry drunk. I was an emotional drunk. And honestly, this is parts of this relationship. And I think this is important to know that people that have been through very big trauma situations sometimes have lapses and holes in these things. But I don't remember what we argued about. But we were arguing in some drunken fueled thing. And I remember him calling me a see you next Tuesday. And I started going off on him and screaming because, mind you, I'm a strong ass woman, right? So I'm not like in the corner just, oh my God, how could you call me that? I'm fierce. And I remember him backhanding me so hard that I spun because I was like 106 pounds soaking wet then. And I remember like hitting the floor like, what the fuck? Did that just happen? Whoa, it was just the world stopped but spun at the same time. And I remember not making him leave. He was going out of town the next day for a few days to go visit family. And I remember he stayed the night. He woke up the next day and he was the one trying to say like, well, maybe this won't work out. I don't know. Da, da, da. And I'm the one going, no, we can get past this. It'll be okay. And 2 months in, because I was so set on this being this was it. This had to be it. This is what I deserved, which is insanity to me now. So he left and came back. And when he came back, he had this Pandora bracelet for me because jewelry was my thing. It was so thoughtful. It had the birthstones of our month. It had like a doggy chain for my dog Pink, which is interesting that he gave me that because this was my next red flag. I'll get to that in a second. But I was just like, okay, he's not going to do it again. He wouldn't. He was just drunk, which is so, for lack of a better word, cliche of a lot of abuse stories.
And can I ask you, Riley, before you keep going,
yeah.
Do you think, because I recognize a lot of this in myself, what you're saying,
yeah,
it was almost so incredibly clever and manipulative of him instead of like he knew this is the first time that he's done this to you, laid hands on you, and he was probably in tune to like if you had abandonment issues from having father issues, that he went straight into I'm going to make her think I'm going to leave her. Because then instead of focusing on my behavior, I'm going to hit that deep rooted fear. And when you get that fear, you forget everything else.
Because he did it, you pegged it.
Same thing.
And yeah, it's like then you come and you give the gift, you make this monumental like thing of in the bracelet, he had the month that we wanted to get married. And like, okay, I gave you the fear that I'm going to leave. Let you sit on that for a weekend and come back with this big, beautiful present. And I played on everything. Ugh. It's like each charm in that fucking bracelet was like a piece of my dream that I wanted. So we were fine, I guess, for a little while. And my puppy Pink was only a couple of months old at that time. He was the only person she ever bit in her life, which should have been a red flag. But one day I came home and Pink was cowering underneath my bed. And I was like, what happened? He's like, this fucking dog bit me. I was like, why did she bite you? Because she was a puppy. She was like this tiny little thing. She was a little miniature pinscher chihuahua mix. Wow. And he said that she had pissed on his nice coat. And I remember being like, what the fuck did he do to this dog to have, because Pink was a sprightly little thing. You know, she would bark and whatever. And I kind of ignored that, which for me is like, you know, Pink was my first baby before I had babies. And the next time there was an incident with the dog, I came home and he was putting away groceries and the door was wide open. And I was like, where's Pink? He's like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, you know, she ran out of the house and I had to get these groceries and I had to get the groceries in the fridge before they went bad. I was like, excuse me, what? Like my dog is missing and you're just putting away milk? So I ran through the neighborhood and Pink, luckily enough, she was just at the playground or whatever, but blocked it out. Didn't think that that was another red flag. And maybe some of this wouldn't have been so awful had there not been that first slap.
Riley,
then,
I have a question. After that first slap, I mean, did he apologize at all, or he just went into this mode of like, I'm leaving you, we're not, kind of putting the guilt back on you? Like, was there any acknowledgement? Because I have to imagine that was the first time you'd ever been hit by a man, right?
by a boyfriend, yeah.
By a boyfriend, right? And so was it that shocking, or was it something like you had seen before, and so at the time it didn't really register how bad that was?
I don't think it was that bad to me because my biological father beat the shit out of my mom. I think I have blocked out a lot of that stuff because she actually just told me the other day when I was in the hospital. I had like pneumonia and I was just this tiny little kid and I was hospitalized. They had just gotten divorced and he broke her cheekbone because he found out she had been talking to her first boyfriend and they were divorced for like a year. So I'd imagine between that and the way that my stepfather was when I was raised, because he would look up the child law as to how hard you could hit a kid before you would get in trouble. There was a lot of that.
Wow.
And my mom was always the one that never saw it. I wasn't there. I didn't see it, whatever. So I was, I guess you could say, used to that. So to me, it wasn't the end of the world. Like this happened in families. And, you know, I want to say this about my mother, though. She probably did the best that she could, too, because I know there was probably abuse in her family. You know, old school Latina families, you know, this happens.
You don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it. You keep going, whatever. So I think for me, it might have felt normal. And whatever part of me didn't think that it was normal, wanted this dream of this wedding and this family so badly that I just was just like, I'm going to let it go.
This is a first for the Sarah Fraser Show. I've partnered with a mindful eating doctor. You guys know I gained and lost 150 pounds until I found mindfulness and quit all fad dietings. If you have tried every diet under the sun, I want to introduce you to Dr. Applin at Optimal Body. Go to myoptimalbody.com, request an appointment, and be sure to say that the Sarah Fraser Show sent you, because you can qualify for a free personalized assessment plus a bonus free 30-day supply of their gut repair product when you sign up for a customized plan. Again, that's myoptimalbody.com to request an appointment. I have never partnered with a fad weight loss company, and I never will. Dr. Applin is the real deal. If you have even tried Ozempic and it didn't work for you, you need to see him. Starts with a gut reset, and they actually make a plan for you that is long-term and slow weight loss, so you can keep it off and change your life forever. Don't believe me? Go and read their mindful 5-star reviews. Go to myoptimalbody.com and tell them the Sarah Fraser Show sent you.
So
did he go for a while before it happened again?
Yeah.
Like
the hitting didn't happen again for a while. But when it did, it really did. We went to New Orleans to see his family, and New Orleans is the town of drinking. And that's all we did. That was our favorite pastime together, was drink. And we went to New Orleans, and I was drunk, and I don't know what got into me. A drunk person speaks a sober mind, I guess. But I started arguing with him about the first time he hit me. And we were staying like with his family and stuff. So this was for him, not the opportune time for me to bring this up. He wanted to go to a hotel and not stay with them. And I don't really know why, but I remember not wanting to go in the hotel with him. And again, 106-pound me, and he's this like 6 foot big dude. He wanted me to go into the hallway to go towards the room, and I was being stubborn and I wouldn't. I had these big old 6-inch heels on like an idiot. And he was just like, you got to go to the fucking room. And he took me by the arm and pushed me through the doorway. So, those hotel rooms have those like metal lips on the doors that'll shut, like on the seams on the bottom of the door. And I hit that and I went flying, and my jaw went like this, like the way that my teeth hit, it split, and I hit my chin on the floor. And I didn't feel anything at first, obviously, because I was super wasted. And I looked up at him, and the terror in his face was the moment that it registered that there was something wrong. Like,
what do you mean?
Apparently, because I was just like, okay, I'm going to get up and go to the damn hotel room already. It wasn't like you just fucking threw me through a door, basically. I was like, okay, I concede, I'll go. But apparently, because of the fact that I had to have 6 stitches in my chin, because when I looked up at him, it was gushing blood. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that at that time. And he was just like, oh, fuck. So we had to go to the emergency room, and they had to give me stitches, and I'm crying. And it's so weird in these moments of trauma, the shit that your brain goes to. Like, you don't want to focus on what's happening. So I'm like, I don't want stitches. I don't want scars. And that's all that I was worried about. And he was being so sweet. He was standing over me. He was holding my hand. He was rubbing my face. It's okay, baby. It'll be fine. And that's all I could focus on. He's my savior right now, when he was the one that put me in this place where I'm bleeding all over the place.
Did the hospital ask you what happened? Like, how did this happen?
No. The lie that I composed was that I had these big stilettos on and that I tripped. And I told that lie for years. And when we got home, and this is again, this abuser mindset, this narcissist mindset, he started crying. Literally said that he was seeing God. That he had this epiphany of what he needed to be as a person, and he needed to confess something to me. And I was like, well, what's that? He's like, well, I was abused by a family member as a boy. And I'm like, just so like mind boggled by everything that's happening. But the empath in me that he knew, I was like, well, you have to like deal with this. Did your parents know? Go tell them right now. Like, I'm literally 6 stitches, and I had part of a tooth missing as well. Like, I could feel the nerve. Remember that story that I told about Kane later?
Yeah.
So he went and told his dad and made this big spectacle at that moment. And then his parents were arguing about, this is bullshit, blah, 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 blah.
Wait, went and told his dad what? That he had been abused?
He had been abused. And it was this big diversionary thing.
Wow. This is all happening over the weekend that you guys are visiting New Orleans. And his parents did not know. They believe the story of you tripping. They don't know that you guys have had this incident.
I don't think his mom did.
Oh, you think his mom kind of knew?
Yeah, because
there's no way they don't know something's wrong with their son.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, but they're also old school Catholic family. You don't talk about it, because his dad was a very aggressive man. You know, he was very grumpy, and he was kind to me because I think that he liked that I would stand up sort of to him. But I think his mom kind of knew, because she was crying so hard when we were leaving to go home. And fast forward to later when we broke up, she was kind of wanting us to break up. And I remember saying to her once, like, what did I do wrong? Like, why? Like, why? What did I do wrong? Like, why am I in the wrong in this? And she was like, you're not, honey. You know, and that's really the most that she said. She was a sweet woman. But I think she knew. Like, when we left there, and this is so like mind-boggling again to me, the person I am now, that how much I would like just put it away. We went home, and in New Orleans you can stop on the side of the street and get like alcoholic slushies. And I was like, okay, we're just gonna get drunk again. We're just gonna ignore and everything's fine. I'm gonna forgive him. He's been through all this trauma. This is why I can help him. And I remember taking a sip of that slushy and the ice cold slush hit that nerve of the tooth. And I remember for 1 second being like, what are you doing? But I very quickly quieted that voice like that. We went home. I told the story on the air of how I had tripped, and it was very indicative of me, right? Like, oh, little Miss Riley Couture loves her heels. And oh, it was the cobblestone in New Orleans, and I fell and I was just being stupid and drunk. It's fine. That was the only time I've ever lied to listeners, ever. And this is the sickest part. After I went and I had my tooth replaced by a client and told that same story. As a matter of fact, he showed up to that appointment as I was getting the cap put on because he wanted to be supportive, which probably wasn't about that.
No, he
probably
wanted to make sure you were telling the story. Yeah. That you agreed to, probably.
Yeah. So.
Wow. What a controlling move, by the way, to show up to your dental appointment. Unannounced, or did he tell you he was coming?
He told me it was coming, but it was like this, I'm going to be there for you. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And like 2 weeks later, I found my dream ring on eBay. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, it was this big 2-carat rock, and it was like going for like nothing. Some divorcee had gotten it, and he was like, well, I don't have the money for it. I have like this much money. And if you want it, then you'll have to pay for the rest, which is fine. You know, like, it's not the most romantic thing, but I was like, oh my God, I want it. And I remember thinking in myself, like, oh, well, I'm the one that wants this big ring. I should pay for it. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the way that he was just like, if you want it, then you pay for it type thing. So we got the ring, and like a week later, he got down on one knee. Like, I came inside and Pink was playing on the computer. And he got down on one knee and he had another bracelet, like the first one. But this time it had different stones and a wedding pillow. It had a little pillow on it with a ring on it. And he got down on one knee and he said, will you marry me? And I remember pausing in my head going, say yes. Like, yes, get the word out, say yes. And I started like ugly crying. And I was like, yes. And like, I called my mom and I was like, we have a ring. And then she's like, are you excited? Are you okay? And I'm just like, I think, because in my head I was happy crying, right? But I think now back to it that I was not. And he said to me, like, are you happy? And I was like, yeah, everything's great. Da da da. We're so happy. And from there on, we were okay for a minute. But
how much time has passed at this point from meeting him?
10 months, maybe.
Okay, so really soon. Wow. All right.
Yeah. So we went back to New Orleans later on to like pick out my wedding dress. I picked out my wedding dress with his mom and his aunt, and that trip was magical. We were getting along. Everything was great. I fell in love with New Orleans. I heard all of these stories of him as a little boy. I loved his family. It was amazing. And his dad, during that trip, I think it was Christmas time, had given me an amethyst stone because he knew that I loved jewelry so much. And for his dad being such a prickly man, I thought this was so great. Okay, everything's gonna be fine. And
yeah, they pulled out a lot of stops for you. I mean, I can see how this is very confusing because
so that trip was okay. But then there was always moments where I would have like the anger arise in me at inopportune times. And we'd had a fight about, I don't even know what, and we were screaming at each other so loudly that the cops came. And
was this at his parents' house still?
No, this was when we came back
to Memphis.
Okay.
After. And we were in my apartment, which was a part of an endorsement. I was living there like for free, like for trade. So we were screaming and the cops came and he was like leaving, like they were going to take him in the car to leave. And I was like, no, 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 please don't take him. What do you mean don't take him to jail? And all I was afraid of is that he would lose his job and then all this stuff would happen. And he's completely calm as a cucumber. He just leaves. And he came back the next day and he went and he was napping, and I don't know why, but I started just being fueled with rage out of nowhere. And I jumped on him as he was sleeping. And
Wow.
was shaking him. I was so mad. I was pounding on his chest. And, how could you, like, it was just a break. And he got up and he had one of his, it was like a hat, and it had like a plastic part of the bill on the back, or on the back of it. And he took it and he was whapping me with it, just bam, bam, bam. And I remember just like that expression of slapping the taste out of somebody's mouth. It was like he did. And I remember at that moment being so fucking mad that I was in this situation. Like something of my real self came out, that I wasn't conceding, I wasn't whatever. And I was still trying to fight. And that one last whap, I remember I had like broken capillaries in my mouth. And everything was fine after that until a few days later. That I missed this part of the story, and this is important. The first cracks in the relationship that I forgot to tell you guys about was that I had heard through the grapevine, because Memphis is a very small town.
Yeah, I wondered if you heard anything. Okay, yeah, like if the ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend, because I always feel like there's always like the universe is always working, right? So lots of times my friends that have been in these situations, they hear from an ex, an aunt, somebody that's like, beware,
Yeah. So one of my best friends in the world at the time, God rest his soul, because he's not with us anymore, had heard through the grapevine that he had been married to this local girl who was just not it. Like, she'd broken up a lot of relationships and whatever. And I asked him about it, and he was just like, well, you got to go. I'm breaking up with you. The fact that you would think that I would do this, you got to leave, blah, 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 blah. Like, he packed up all of my things and told me to go. I had to go to a remote that day and be on.
Hold on. Wait. I need to make sure I understand. You found out, or it seemed like there was a rumor that he was married?
Yeah.
And you asked him, are you married?
Not married at the time. Was he married to this girl at any time?
Oh, before, not married currently.
Yeah.
Because you only knew about one marriage.
Yeah. And so this was in the very beginning of the relationship, but I'm bringing it, sorry, I know I'm kind of all over the place. I'm bringing it back to the future as to why, after all the hitting and stuff happened. But he completely denied it, tried to break up with me, left me for like 2-3 days, then came back. So there was that story. That's why I'm bringing it back to this one. After all the hitting happened, and after that incident with the hat and like slapping me in the face with the hat, he got up and said, I just wanted to tell you that I'm leaving you. And what you heard about that girl was true. I did marry her. The whole time in our relationship, he had professed that it wasn't true. How could I ever think that? He's not a liar. And he's like, it was true. And I'm leaving. And he packed bags and left for 3 days. And then came back, and I said, like, why would you be so cruel as to say that as you're leaving me? And he's like, well, I wanted you to hate me enough to leave me because I knew that you wouldn't. Which was such a mind fuck.
He's a mind fucker for sure. Oh my God. I can imagine.
Even now I think about it, I'm like, what the fuck?
This is very confusing. Yeah, I mean, I can see how a woman would get caught up in this for sure. I mean, and we talk about this, how it connects a little bit to our whole situation at the Kane show. I mean, that whole environment at Hot 99.5, not sometime Kane would throw keys at Sammy and trash can. But anyway, it has some similarities in the psychological part of it, where it was like, wait, is it me? Am I, because I had a manager there tell me, well, if you just did more show prep, then Peter wouldn't get upset. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'll do 2.5 hours of show prep every day instead of 2, and maybe that will change. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it's like
I
you
mean,
grow.
I hate when people say they find out a woman is being abused, and it usually by the time people find out, it's at the climax, like the worst of it.
Yeah,
And they're like, why didn't she just leave? People do not understand until you've experienced it. It's not just like he's beating on you and then everything's normal, whatever. Like there is so much mental manipulation, so much gaslighting, so much poking at your abandonment issues. And it breaks you down over time until, I mean, that's the epitome of gaslighting, until you don't know what is reality anymore,
yeah.
especially if you come from past traumas that you're not healed from, because all they're
Yeah.
doing is poking at that. It makes it all
Not
incredibly confusing. It's not black and white.
No, I mean, and even as I tell the story, I'm going, oh my God, remember, I'm like reliving all these pieces of it. So we were 4 months out from our wedding and things had calmed down again.
So he came back and you just,
Okay,
Wow.
he's done.
because you just wanted him there.
Yeah, I wanted that story. I wanted the
You
wedding.
wanted the dream.
I wanted the dream.
What
And
about
Which really, you wanted the family.
yeah,
I mean, at least that
Yeah,
was
the
with
love.
me, is I was so
Yeah.
pushing to get married and have kids because
Same.
I wanted a family.
A family? Yeah. And we'd planned this big wedding. Of course, clients were helping pay for it. It was this big talk of the town. I'd had my dress, all this stuff. And it was like, to me, out of nowhere, but not really. I think honestly, there might have been some part of him that could not deal with what he was doing to me. So it was easier for him to just be like, oh, I'm gonna dip out. And he broke up with me 4 months before our wedding. And I was begging him not to go.
Wow.
And when I say that I had like a psychosomatic break, I did. Because I remember trying so hard to get him not to leave that I started like scratching my face, and I was like, please don't go. Like, I'll die if you leave me. Like, look what you're doing to me. Like, I think back to that girl and I want to give her a hug because I was begging this monster to stay, and he just stone faced just left. And I didn't tell anybody at first. I told my parents, but I didn't tell anybody on the air. Like, I went to events wearing my engagement ring and just wasn't ready to like face it with the world. And a couple months went by with that where my family were so scared for me that they were gonna like have me like committed, almost like they were afraid the way that I was talking.
And they didn't know anything about the abuse, right?
No, my mom did. Like,
Oh,
that's why they wanted me, because I was, all I could talk about is how much I wanted him back. Like, I was going to therapy and I was telling the therapist that I just wanted him back. And it wasn't him. I know that now. But I went home to some of my best friends, and there's this picture of me holding my best friend's like newborn son with these scratches down my neck. And how sad is that? Like, I'm meeting my best friend and the whole world's baby, and that's what it was. And I remember her saying to me, like, Raquel, what are you doing? So after that trip, I went home and I started to breathe. He'd been gone about 2 months at this point.
no contact?
Nothing.
Wow.
And I'll never forget this day. It was the first day that I was like, okay, I can live, I can do this. I was running around my apartment with my dog, and it was a sunny day. I had music playing, and I get a text from him that said, I just went to New Orleans and I realized there how much I miss you, and I hadn't been back with my family for such a long time, and the last times that I went there was with you, and I love you and I want to work this out.
They always know.
It's like
They
clockwork.
always
Wow.
know.
Oh, this episode is so deep. Look, I want to thank you guys always for frequenting my sponsors. It keeps this show going and hopefully more to come. OneSkin is one of those sponsors. Today, if you purchase from OneSkin, you're saving 15% off your entire order simply by using the code TSFS. If you haven't heard of OneSkin, it's amazing. OneSkin has their own OS01 peptide formula that goes to the cell level. It has proven in a 12-week clinical trial performed by a third-party organization that it was shown to strengthen the skin barrier, improve skin health markers, and diminish visible signs of aging. I use their eye cream, which I love. I notice the most firmness with their eye cream. I think it reduces wrinkles within a week of using it. And then their facial cream I love too because it's fragrance-free. OneSkin is more than just skincare. It's about skin longevity, targeting the root causes of aging to help you look and feel your best at every age. Get started today with 15% off using the code TSFS at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code TSFS. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard of them. Please say the Sarah Fraser Show sent you. It's time to expect more from your skincare routine. Invest in the health of your skin with OneSkin. Riley, wait, just to give everybody context. So at this time, did the radio station, did your coworkers have any idea what was going on? I mean, this is like a big thing to kind of keep secret. And then the wedding is called off, right? I'm assuming.
Yes. Thank you for filling that in. What I had finally told the people on the air that, you know, I had to call clients and cancel all of this. I had to tell my friends, like, I'll give you back the money for the dresses, and because it was all planned. We were 4 months out. My parents had loaned me money for the wedding, and I was like, God, am I going to be in debt? Luckily enough for me, all the clients understood. They were so nice. They didn't make us give deposits back, and everything was like, okay, it's working out in my favor. And then, he came back. And by that time, I had already had an interview for Nashville. I was picking up my life. I wasn't going to stay in Memphis anymore. I was going to move on.
And had you been, were you done with the radio station? Were you still working and you were just looking for another job? Did they blow up the morning show?
There.
Okay.
I was still on the morning show, and I had an interview. I was in the process of it.
Okay, so you just wanted a fresh start regardless of what was happening on the Memphis radio show, and you were applying to Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think I was a shoo-in, but, some of my previous mentors had given their word for me. And I was just in this, like, when you're in that process where they're going to, like, fly you out there, or you're going out there to see them, you're pretty close. You're within the cluster of a few people. And he had planned another trip to New Orleans for us as a weekend getaway. And the motherfucker planned it on our wedding day. And I remember being at his house and crying because it was such a beautiful November day. Like, it would have been the perfect wedding day. And I remember crying, and he got so angry at me. He's like, what the fuck are you crying about? Da, da, da. Like, I wasn't allowed to be sad about what had happened before. It was, you just have to be happy we're back together. Cried the whole way to New Orleans. And then I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to get it together. I'm going to put it back in the compartment again. And the whole time throughout the trip, he's like, I've got secrets. I know. I want to look for a really pretty place. I want to find a really pretty place and get a really pretty picture of you. And I was like, he's going to fucking propose again.
Proposing on what would have been your wedding day.
Yes.
Wow.
How messed up is that?
Yes.
Wow.
So he didn't find this perfect, pretty place. We were going to get couples massages, and I had a stomach ache. I was in the bathroom taking the biggest duty I've ever taken. And I opened the door to him down on one knee. How freaking, like, metaphoric is that?
Yeah, right.
Like the smell of shit is literally permeating in the air, and he is down on one knee with that engagement ring from before.
Oh my God.
What a story to tell people when they ask how you got engaged.
Mm-hmm. So,
oh my God,
was there
how mortifying.
any part in you that hesitated at all before saying yes again?
So weird is in that time, no. The first time I did, but this one I was like, yes, I put it back on, texted one of my best friends who was a bridesmaid, was going to be a bridesmaid then, was a bridesmaid at my wedding, the one that really happened. And I sent her a picture of the ring. I said, well, this happened. She goes, and did you say yes? Like people were just like, what? Okay.
That's good that people, at least in your life, were like, at least they knew and they were saying to you, okay, this isn't normal. I always think that's
Some of them.
helpful,
Did that snap you out of it at all?
No,
Hearing
because my
other
mom was
people?
into it. My mom was there.
Oh,
I think that's part of her like compartmentalizing
that's
all
part
that.
of her trauma too.
Yeah. So I got the news that I was getting the job in Nashville. And I was like, okay, great start. We're going to go to Nashville. We're going to move together. Everything's going to be great. He had promised me that he was going to move, even though he didn't want to leave his big money job. We got an apartment together that I couldn't afford on my own, but he promised me if I needed money, he would give it to me. And I did afford that by my own. I never asked him for money. I was very proud of that.
Wait, but didn't you live together?
So we lived together in Memphis, but when I was moving to Nashville, I had to get a new apartment for us to live together. And
But wait, why is he saying he'll help you with?
it was expensive, and he wanted me to get the bigger apartment for him to have more space when he moved in.
or when he moved in. Ah, gotcha.
Oh,
We were
right,
moving
but
from,
I thought I heard you say, yeah, maybe I wasn't listening. I thought I heard you say that said he would help you if you needed it
yeah,
versus we're getting a place together, we're going to split it 50-50.
well, because he was still in Memphis. He didn't come right away. We had long distance for a little while, and we planned another big wedding. One that we
Is he
couldn't afford.
paying for any of these weddings? Is he chipping
So
in?
the first one he was not, and this is what's the big monumental thing, that he really does love me. We looked at venues. There was one venue we could afford and one we could not. So he took money out of his 401k and made this big thing like, I know you want that one, and I want you to have everything that you wanted. I want you to have this princess day. So everything was semi-okay. He even showed up one night because I missed him. I was on the phone with him and I was telling him how much I missed him. He supposedly couldn't come to Nashville that weekend. And it was a Tuesday. And he's like, hold on a second. I gotta knock on the door. And then I hear a knock on my door. And he was there in front of me. And we had this magical night. And I was like, okay, everything is gonna be fine again. Everything's great. One weekend when I went to Memphis, it got the worst it had ever been. We were drunk again and fighting, and he was saying he was going to leave me again. And this time now I was angry. By that time, I had signed for him to get a car because his credit was shit. And he was saying he was going to leave me. So I was just like, okay, well, give me the keys to the car. I'm taking this with me. And he's like, no, you're not. I paid for that. I was like, I'll give you whatever money you gave back. I'm not going to, like, this is my name. You're not going to fuck my credit. I was like being strong about it. And he wouldn't give me the keys to the car. And so we were fighting about the keys to the car. I finally got the keys to the car. I wasn't really going to take it, but I was just acting as if I was. And he took me by the throat and got me up against the garage wall. And he's like, give me the keys. I don't know what was within me at that point, but I had them in my hand and I held them right here. And he kept asking me, give me the keys. And every time I wouldn't give them to him, he would squeeze harder. And at first it was just a hold, but then it became that I couldn't breathe. And I remember just feeling so defiant and like staring him in the face and not giving him the keys because I was like, do what you're going to do. Like, I don't know. It was just like something that I was like, I'm going to feel strong in this. And then when it got to the space where it was getting to where I was like, oh God, this is going to get bad, I dropped the key. And the worst part about that is that I went in the backyard after he walked away from me to where he was sitting and got down on my hands and knees, literally, and begged him not to leave. Because I was so fixated on this story working. This had to have been it. You know, like I was 30 at that time. I needed to have this family. This was my chance. This was going to be it. And this time he was really telling me to go. He called my mom and was just like, she needs to go. And I packed up my dog and my car and drove the 4 hours to Memphis.
Wait, he's saying you need to leave your place in Nashville?
That was when I went to see him in Memphis. So that was the weekend that I was traveling back and forth.
So this happened in Memphis?
Yeah, because he hadn't moved there yet. He was saying he was going to get rid of his job and didn't. So we made up again. But
so you left this.
Home. I left Memphis, went back to Nashville, did the show the next morning.
That's amazing.
And I remember one time I posted a picture of my nails and it showed my ring. And I hadn't told listeners that we were back together yet. But someone saw it and they commented on it and they were like, oh my God, Riley, please tell us, are you guys back engaged? We're so excited, da, da, da. Memphis listeners didn't know, but Nashville listeners did. But these were Memphis listeners that were like, oh my God, are you engaged? Blah, blah, blah. Are you guys back together? We're so happy, because they didn't know all the abuse. And there was a woman underneath there that said, I give it 2 years. And nobody had ever been that mean about us. And I was like, what is this? I had some premonition that like something ain't right there, because he'd been like tapering off and like not taking like job offers seriously and talking so negatively. And I called him and I asked him about it. And I was like, what? Who is this person? And he went off. You fucking ruined my life. You're a fucking bitch. You're just so dramatic. Like flipping out. And he's like, I'm not coming. We're not getting married. Blah, blah, blah. And at that moment, I said, like, you're wrong. Like, you are wrong for this. I was like, do you realize you've maligned my whole life and you keep dangling this carrot just to take it back? I was like, you're fucking wrong for this. I said, you know, you realize you make me want to kill myself when you do this to me. And his last words to me, I hope you do. I hope you go slit your fucking throat.
Wow.
At least I had the strength in me to not. That was enough. And I wasn't okay for a long time. Every moment that I could, when I got off the air, I would drink and I was just alone. Like, I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want help. And it took a very, very long time before I was like, okay with all that. Like, and what's so crazy is I used to sit in the corner of my apartment and look at that ring and put it on. Like, you know that scene from way back in the day, if you've ever seen Sex and the City, where Charlotte's putting on her wedding ring and she's just walking around her house and like is still trying to have that dream. I went through months and months of counseling after that. And my counselor's office was right next to the venue that we were supposed to get married at.
Yeah.
So that was also a gut check to weekly have to go look at that.
How did you even know though to get therapy? Because I think that's actually kind of what's pretty amazing about your story is, you know, a lot of people never get the chance or never really want to do the work, like we were talking about at the start of this, to really look inward. Did you read a book? Did you see something on TV? Like, how did it click with you that you needed a therapist?
I don't even think that it really clicked. Nobody told me too, because I was always like the strong one, and I think somewhere in myself, I knew that if I didn't seek out help from people that really knew how to help me, because my mom was always just, no, it's fine, it's fine. And, my friends were so far away that I think somewhere innately I knew that it wasn't gonna be good if I didn't. Because then I was like alone dealing with the grief of letting someone do this to me and not having the strength to like leave. And I had built this whole new life supposedly with him, and this wedding wasn't happening. And I remember just being like, I gotta do something, like, because there was times where I would not even get out of bed if not to let my dog out. And I remember saying to my friend at the time, like, I wish the wedding just would have happened. Even if we got divorced, I wish the wedding would have just happened. And she was like, Riley, why? I was like, I don't know. I just felt like that one magical moment would have made it all worth it. And she said to me, like, no. She was Southern. She used to call me Raquel Bell. And she was like, baby girl, when you get married someday, it's going to be the most magical thing ever. And you're going to understand why this didn't happen.
Mm.
She's also not with us anymore either. So that, like, I always thought of that. But I did not have another boyfriend for 6.5 years after that.
Wow.
I was going to ask you, how long from the time that, it finally ended, did it take for you to see it for what it was, to realize it wasn't your fault and about you, to see him for who he really was?
It was, oh God, I don't, in total, like in full, you know what I mean? Probably not for like a good 4 years.
Yeah.
Like in that time too, right after this breakup, oh, I get the call to go to Atlanta. And I'm like, I don't want to, I almost didn't go to Atlanta.
Wow.
But I think the realization when I realized that everything was going to be okay, I was going to be okay, was literally right before I had my son. I remember a week before, when I was pregnant, I was still pining over this fucking ring, right? Not the week before I had my son, but a couple weeks before I had my son. I was trying on the ring and I sent my friend a picture of it. And she's like, when are you going to fucking let go of that? It's like a ghost in your closet. So I knew that I had to get a mommy car versus the Mustang that I had. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to let go of this ring, I'm going to get something. My one big thing that I'm going to get before I'm a mom and everything becomes about the baby. And I sold that ring and bought my car. And I remember watching like my Mustang that I love so much, like drive away into the dealership. And then the big white car came out. And I remember being like, okay, like that was the last piece of whatever was like with Memphis. And I was like, now this is my new life. Like there was new life coming in literally into the world. And it was like, I was becoming a stronger person. I had to,
Wow.
So many people ask like, how did you get through that? How did you leave him? And that was the only thing that I regret. It's funny how this came around later too, when so many people ask me about like leaving radio and stuff. It's like, I only regret not having enough self-worth to leave. That no fairy tale or somebody else's idea of a fairy tale is worth that. Because the minute that I let go of strangling God and the universe to give me what I wanted in life was the minute I got it all of it. So
Can I just tell you, I was just going to say, I've been thinking at this whole time you've been telling this story, how proud seems a little condescending, but just how amazed I am and how grateful I am, there's the word, that you did tell that part of the story about how you begged him to stay, about how it was him. You know, it wasn't you had this, I'm picking myself up and leaving this abusive situation. I love that you told that because it's honest and it's what so many women can relate to. I can so relate to being so desperate to hang on to the idea of finally having a husband or a man that's going to fill that void my father left or whatever, that I would hang on to any relationship just because I needed that void to be filled. So I'm so in awe and grateful that you
Yeah.
told that part specifically.
Yeah.
Because
like,
it's real life, it's true. And so many of us can relate.
Yeah. That's like my husband, when he hears these stories, he's like, who the fuck was that? Because in our wedding vows, I actually said to him, like, thank you for fixing a heart you didn't break. Because when I met him,
Oh,
I was so like, you will not open a door for me. I'm Miss Independent. We're not, I'm gonna be your wife and I'm gonna have my own money. I'm gonna have da, 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 da. Like there was no like, I'm not gonna lean on you for shit. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop when he came around. He's always telling me, keep those shoes tied. He still tells me that now. Like even married, and as much as I love him, and we have our sons, and he ain't going anywhere. If he goes anywhere, I'm like gonna lasso him and bring it back. Like, but even now, I have those issues where if he's silent or whatever, like what's wrong? Like not that I think Marshall would ever 1 ounce of him could ever be that. He's the most genuine, kind, wonderful man that I've ever met.
it has
So I
nothing
always
to
say
do
like
with him. Yeah.
if it's not you, it's nothing. Like I'm gonna be an old lady and I'm gonna lock all the lady parts up on if it's not you, it's nothing. But even now, I do still have some residual like issues with that I always feel like there's something in me that like something bad is going to happen. And that's still work that I do today. That's still work that I'm like, Marshall loves you more than anything. And me too with him. But it's, it's always a journey. It's not a destination. And
Well,
it's
I'm curious. How did you attract your husband? Like, how did you break that cycle? Because I think for a lot of women and men listening, right, they go to therapy. They see, I know they attract the same person over and
I've
over,
done it
right?
twice.
Right?
Yeah.
Natasha and I have talked about this. And I had this pattern because my dad passed away when I was like 15 years old. So, it's this weird psychological thing where you just like stop maturing and you're sort of looking for that father figure like we've all just discussed. So I kept attracting these older men. And I hated it because they're old, they want to do old men things, right? And I'm like, no, why? And people would look at me like, an old man Ed was super nice that people knew on the Kane show. But we would go out and people would be like, why are you with this guy? And I'm like, oh, I kept like making all these excuses. And it wasn't because he was a good person. It was just like, they were like, it's odd. Like you should be with someone your own age. You have a lot going on your own age. I had to actually consciously like find out how old the guy was, if he was divorced with kids or getting divorced, because I went out with many of them, they said they were getting divorced or whatever. So I had to consciously not date that person. I'm curious, as a manifester that you are, how did you attract somebody that I'm assuming did not come from, or if did come from seeing, a dysfunctional marriage, like had the awareness to not repeat that cycle? How did you do that?
What's funny that you say that. It's so funny how much we all have in common, because right before Marshall, I was actually dating a guy older. He was 23 years older than me. No, maybe not 23.
I know, I've been there.
Wait,
That's
I was
a lot.
37, 36. He was 54. So whatever that math is.
Yep.
And
Like 18.
Yes,
yeah,
I
so
dated a guy
17.
18 years older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
gosh. Yes.
And I remember he said something to me once, like, oh, if we ever got married, I would pay for the bills. I would be the provider. And I remember I was like, what? First of all, I said nothing about marrying your ass. And I remember in my mind, like, I was a single mom, I was broke, and like the security of that was attractive to me and him. But when he like broke up with me, and I was so sad, I was like, wait a minute, we're doing this again, girl. No, that's not for you. Let it go. And I remember I started reading The Secret.
Yeah,
and
you have
all
to
of
be.
that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But the moment that I literally feel like I manifested Marshall was when I was doing my 2017 vision board, and or 2018 vision board, and I was crying over it. And I remember literally like out loud having a conversation with myself as I'm putting bridal stuff, baby stuff, house stuff on this vision board, which is sort of counterintuitive to manifestation, but that's a whole nother conversation. I remember saying like, okay, God, if this is it, if this is my life, that it's just me and my son, then I am choosing right now to be okay with that, because that is better than chasing after these swinging dicks that are treating me like shit. I would rather be alone and be the best mom that I can to my kid, and be the best radio personality and the best friend and the best whatever else it is that I can control, than letting all of my happiness land in somebody else. That was December 31st, January, or just 2019. I met Marshall January 6th of, no, December 18, whatever, New Year's Eve, December 18. I met Marshall January 6th of 2019, 7 days later. And there was a lot of manifestation practices in between there too. But it was really all about finding out what I said before in the beginning about what did I do wrong? What did I accept? What would I never accept again? That was my biggest thing. And Marshall he did grow up with abuse. He did. And I think he was the other way around. He wasn't going to repeat that cycle.
Yeah, some people have that. They see it and they're like, never again. Yeah.
Why didn't I get that gene?
I know. Well, it's hard. It's hard. And it's funny you say that, because my therapist had me write down, because I kept attracting these older guys, what do you really want? And it's interesting, I think, sometimes when you physically write it down and then you kind of, like you said, you let it go. Sometimes it's just so subconscious. I think you attract that. Yeah. In your journal. I know.
In my journal.
Me too.
I literally read this to him 11/9/2017. I read this to him on our wedding day. I said, I'm so grateful for my amazing husband. I'm so grateful for my son and my daughter. Well, I didn't get that one right.
You never know. There's still time.
What?
I'm so grateful for my successful podcast.
What?
Oh,
That's crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah, so there's a lot more stuff in here about my husband and being specific about what I wanted and having a vision for my life and having a vision of what I wanted. I got real specific about his attributes. I said I wanted a man with a sleeve of tattoos.
Oh.
He didn't have one full sleeve when he met me, and a week later he got it.
Wow, that's real detailed. I was just like, I just want a
Riley.
man my own age who's not married.
Oh, I said he can't like sports. He can't. He doesn't want to share a closet with me, which we don't have the same closets.
You got real
I said he'll
detailed.
be amazing.
that laughs at some of our plans.
Like literally, I tell people this in manifestation all the time. Get fucking specific. Like literally ask for what you want. Because if you don't ask, believe, and receive it, nobody's gonna do it for you. Literally.
It is
and
true.
I don't give a shit if it's placebo. And I know like Kim Zolciak-Bierman said that first, or whatever. She was the first person to make that kind of famous, but it's literally true. Like if you actively put into motion what you want in your life and you act as if you already have it, that's what that was about. Because I didn't have a husband at that point, but I was writing down the things that I wanted and the things that I knew I wanted, that I wasn't just wanting a wedding. I did put that in there. Thank you for my perfect wedding, because it was what I wanted. Whatever.
Yeah.
And I did get that. But I had a rose quartz crystal, because rose quartz is the ultimate stone of love. I held that with me every single night before I went to bed. I said, thank you, thank you, thank you for the best thing that had happened that day. That's my biggest practice in manifestation. If I let everything else go to the wayside, journaling and all these other active practices, that was the one thing that I always kept, was that, because the idea behind that is that you go to bed thinking about the best thing that happened to you that day. So then you have a great sleep and you wake up, and before your feet hit the floor, you say the same thank you, thank you, thank you for the best thing that's going to happen that day. I did a lot of that with manifestation. And it was crazy how when Marshall and I met, it was like, there was no questioning it. we were also dopes and like 2 months in planning a family. We got pregnant with our first that we lost like 3 months in. 4 months in, he was planning the ring. We would have gotten married a year later, but we had a pandemic in Malin. But when it's for you, it's going to be for you. But again, I don't think that I would have been able to accept the love from Marshall had I not gone through a lot of therapy and a lot of self-work and stopped drinking. And I guess you could say I'm grateful for all that horrid time because mind you, Marshall, it took him 3 days, three times to ask me out because I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm going to do dry January. I'm not dating anybody. And then finally I was like, all right, fine, fuck it. One more time. I'll go on one more date. The rest is history. So
Wow.
I love you learned to be happy on your own first with what you had. Like how you said, if that's what I say all the time, God, if this is it, if I'm not meant to find love again, like, thank you for this amazing life that I do have. Because I know how blessed I am and being happy with on your own.
Yeah.
Yes. Even now, like Bethany Frankel said this of her first marriage. And I know that that's not a good example because it didn't work out, but she said this sat with me that like the sum of us is greater than each of its parts. So we're whole on our own, but together we are better, for lack of a less cheesy term. But yeah, I think that I'm glad to be able to tell this part of my story again because there's so many women that will DM me and be like, I'm so embarrassed. You're such a strong woman. Like, what do I do about this? Like, please don't judge me. I'm like, listen.
It has nothing to do with your strength and
no.
I don't know.
It can happen. I mean, we all know so many people that it's happened to, and I mean, and there are men that are in such toxic relationships with women who had toxic mothers who attract that woman, and it's so hard to like change that cycle. That's what I think is just so powerful about your story, Natasha's, my own. Just I think that's such a gift to give people listening is the awareness that you can break a cycle. I mean, what you and Marshall are doing with your own family. I mean, it's just, and I'm sure we all have, our parents did the best they could with what they had, and it's like to change that is like the greatest thing you can ever do. And I feel like no one ever gets credit for just that because it's so simple. It's not simple. It's so,
it's
I don't
more
think it's
simple
glamorous,
than you would think. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
it's
I'm
simple
just
and
really
hard
grateful
though.
for, like,
it's hard. People don't understand. People that grow up like seeing abuse or it's really hard to not to differentiate.
Like, you don't know
that's
how
not
much
love.
you normalize that.
Right.
I never thought that. Like it wasn't until I went through years of therapy later that I was like, wow, that really wasn't fucking normal. Like,
yeah,
I thought that's just how I grew up. I thought that's how everybody grew up. And then, I would have certain like friends throughout the years or maybe even boyfriends that were like just come and go, and I would see their family and, oh, what, you guys don't fight, you don't get wasted on tequila and scream at each other on Christmas Day, like, right, you never got hit. What? It was so foreign to me.
That's what Robin the therapist taught me about the radio station. What was happening at the Kane show. She's like, you're in an abusive relationship where one day you go to work and you're like getting slapped across the face, and the next day you're being told, we love you. Oh, we don't want to find another Sarah. It's like, it was, I didn't, until she gave me that analogy, I didn't realize what was happening there was so toxic. It just takes that moment.
Yeah. Like, you go through a phase where I think, at least for me, in relationships, like in my personal relationships and stuff like that, where I kind of knew that it wasn't okay. So I wasn't completely oblivious to someone hitting me and, knocking my teeth out and stitches. I knew that wasn't right. I knew that's not what I wanted. But this dream of what I really did want overrode any sense of like, rationale that I had. But that's why I think that I've been so blessed by the art of manifestation and sharing it with other people, is because that was the thing that got me through a lot. And it still does. Like, it's not to say that like marriage now is all Skittles and rainbows and roses, because it's not.
No, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to have a good marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but I mean, I think I know it's annoying. I equate everything to working out. If I want a nice ass, I have to do the squats. If I want a nice marriage, I have to do the work.
Totally.
So it's just, I think it's very, for everyone that has ever said like, oh my God, you have this perfect relationship, I want that. And I'm like, for me, yes, I have finally found the perfect relationship for me. But as much as I do believe I manifested it, there was a long road to get to that space where I was able to
Mhm.
accept it.
Yeah. Well, you
So
put in a lot of, like you said, you put in a lot of work. It wasn't just writing in your journal, this is the guy. You actually went to therapy and I'm sure addressed some deep-rooted things. It's so funny when you were saying that, I was like, oh, the next episode we should all have our moms on. And
oh my God. It's uncanny though how much we as women have
About that.
like just this trio have so much in common that I'm discovering all the time that I'm just like, and even me, it makes me feel less alone. Really, it does.
Yeah.
It makes
Mhm,
me
it
feel less
does.
like what was wrong with me that even now after all the work, I still have those moments. So like, I'm really like, I'm glad that it resonated with you, Natasha, too, because I know like you've had a similar road in that way. Um, I'm not gonna.
It's
Well, I don't want to cry anymore.
I know.
no,
But
it's like I was telling you, outside of this episode we were chatting, it only happened to me once physically, been in many emotionally abusive relationships. And the hardest part for me was not, I mean, it was really hurtful seeing somebody that I trusted do that. But the worst part was it took away this security that I walked around with before. I'm tiny little Latina like you, and I felt like I could get up in his face and say whatever I wanted. And if I wanted to go off, I'll go off. And to then see how fragile I actually was the most shocking part, that
do you know what's crazy
a
about that,
man can just pick you up. Like you are not invincible. That messed with me for years.
My friend that I was telling you about, the one with the Southern accent, she actually called
Hmm.
my ex-fiance once and she goes, I'm really scared for her about you because she's not afraid of you, but I am. She's like, I'm afraid of what you're going to do because she's getting to this space where she's not going to back down and you're going to hurt her. So there's so
Yeah.
many layers to that type of abuse that so many people don't talk about. And I don't care if it's beating a dead horse because I know there's millions of others that have done it before us and hopefully we'll do it after.
There's
But
so much it takes away from you beyond
yeah,
just the In fact, it's like the physical injuries are the least destructive part
yes,
of it.
because I actually told Marshall when we were first together that I was like, I wish there's certain parts of me that were left in Memphis that day I was being choked against a wall. I said, I wish you could have seen that piece of me that was so willing to love
Mm,
without that moment of like, what do you got under your sleeve? But you know what? He got the better half of me, so it's okay.
he did. And I want women who are listening to this, who are relating to this, who are probably still in the middle of this, to realize, like, be gentle with yourself with wherever you are right now. If you are still, holding on to but I want a family, but he's the husband or the father, like you can't let go of that because of whatever issues you have. Just be gentle with yourself for where you are today and just make the next right decision for yourself, because it takes years for us to be able to talk about this in hindsight. This isn't something we just woke up one day and all of a sudden realized, oh, this is why I did this behavior, and this is why he did this, and this is why it was unhealthy. It takes a long time, and there's some parts of me that still aren't healed. I
Same.
say I'm not dating and it's mostly true because I just want to focus on me and the kids and what makes me happy. But I don't know how to ever trust somebody again not to change. I don't know how to
Someone,
ever trust that somebody is who they seem to be at the beginning.
someone
So I'm
will give
not
you
ready
space
to
to
do
fail.
that.
No. And when God and the universe want it for you, that person's going to pop their head in your face and be like, where the fuck did you come from?
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
ready. Like it will.
Yeah. So
It
just,
will.
yeah, I know, but I'm gentle with myself that I'm not there yet now. I'm
Yeah.
not, and that's okay. And wherever you are at today, make sure you're safe, make sure
Yeah.
your children are safe, but reach out for help. DM one of us. Like I was telling you, I have a little group of women going through nasty divorces that we talk over direct
So
messages.
good.
Like,
Hmm.
just make the next small right decision. If it's asking for help, then that's your next step. Not be fully healed, just the next right small step.
I like that.
That's such great advice. I was going to say that's amazing advice. I feel like we could always all talk for like 3 hours. So
Oh, you know we could.
I don't know what our next episode's going to be, but it will come. You
I
guys,
actually have an idea for it, you guys.
Tell us.
Oh,
So
no pressure.
when I started talking to Natasha about this a little bit too, but I've been trying to delve into somatic therapy because it's the idea that your body stores that trauma, especially as women, in specific places of your body. And it's these types of exercises and therapy and massage and all this integration to how to release that trauma out of you, because there are some people that talk therapy doesn't work for, because it's like reliving it. So I think we should.
I'm all ears for that.
Somatic is like what? Like tapping? Is it like? Is it?
So it's smaller exercises, because you guys know that I love to do the grind in the gym, right? But it's a lot more yoga, Pilates-esque, but there is some tapping. There's like an actual exercise where in somatic therapy, if you're feeling anxious or you don't know why, so whatever, I do the tapping. Pink does it, but this one is actually one where you're like shaking your whole body. This came up to me when I had my second son, who has sort of like, I think he has some ADHD issues, that like he likes to be rocked a lot more. If you think about that as a child in your womb, you are rocking and knocking all the time.
Constant, yeah.
My therapist actually tells me sometimes to do this when
I was just going to say, I would love if somebody rocked me.
Yeah, right. I want to be rocked. Put me in a Snuggie. Hell yeah. But it's a whole different type of movement, but I'm interested in it. I haven't really found anybody yet that I'm like, connected with, that I would want to like go there, because there's some videos of somatic therapy when you go deep into it that your trauma is like release, but it's the idea that once they do, that specific trauma, at least in your body, leaves you.
Oh, I know. I still carry it all with me. It comes out as tension headaches. It comes out as, my autoimmune disease didn't get bad until after I went through all the things, the stressors in my adult life. You absolutely carry it with you. So I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Somebody tap me.
Let us know.
Wait, that sounded bad.
I will tap you.
Not like tap that. Like, yeah, I'm going to stop.
Rock me. All right, ladies, where can people find you guys? What projects are you working on? Let's all promote.
So a lot of people have been asking, when is my next manifestation seminar? And that is in the works. I've done about 6 of them by now, and they're my favorite thing to do, to share some of those tips and then beyond. There will be one coming up within the next 2 months, but I got to work out logistics of it. People have been asking me, where can you get my crystal intention candles? I have a pop-up coming up on February 18th. And if you want to hit me up on socials, at Riley Couture, Couture spelled like Juicy Couture, at Really Riley Podcast, and at House of W.A. Riley.
Nice. Well, people can always reach me mostly on Instagram, Ms. MS, pink like the color, monster like rar. Also on TikTok, but I'm excited through the encouragement from you two. I finally have my first podcast coming out. Yay! And it is all about just really how I got through everything in my story, is my journey of faith and the healing of faith. And if you feel stuck in your spirituality, you feel like you're not growing in your relationship with God, this is just a nice little sit down with us ladies to just one little step at a time, keep growing.
She's the female Joel Osteen. I can feel it.
I know, right?
Oh God, don't say that.
Manifest that.
Well, I love Joel's podcast.
Yeah.
I love Joel's podcast.
He creeps me out.
Really?
You listen to him? The giant teeth and stuff. I feel slimy.
And Victoria, he always is talking about his wife, Victoria.
Oh my gosh, and her with the hair.
The hair and the plastic surgery. There's just something about Joel's overly positivity that I enjoy. I don't know. I just love a good pep talk from Joel Osteen. But yours will be
works
better.
For you, just don't send your credit card information.
Don't worry, I don't give him a dime. I'll give you a dime to your church. You guys, it's amazing. And the Sarah Fraser Show, 7 episodes a week. So please tune in. You guys have been amazing to support all of us. And I love doing conversations like this. And of course, mixing it up with reality TV. So what a dichotomy from reality to deep chats. Yeah, there you go.
I always say it's your balance.
It's the balance.
We have these chats, and then you go talk about
Sister
1,000-pound sisters.
Yeah.
It's balance.
Exactly. All right, love you both. We'll talk to you
All right,
soon.
ladies.
Bye,
Bye.
ladies.